Hello guys. Welcome to the story world. We are to serve you best stories, but we need your help to complete our goal of 1,000 subscribers. So find the subscribe button and please click on it. Let's jumping into story. Daniel Miller had always thought of himself as a lucky man. At 32, he had built a steady career as a financial analyst in a Denver firm, owned a modest but comfortable home in the quiet suburbs, and, most importantly, was married to Claire. She was the light in his life, the kind of woman who turned heads everywhere she went. With her effortless beauty, long auburn hair, and bright green eyes, she seemed like someone destined for bigger stages than neighborhood barbecues and office parties. But what made Daniel fall in love with her wasn't her looks. It was the way she laughed. When Claire laughed, it was free, unguarded, and filled the room with warmth. He remembered the first time he heard it back in college at a mutual friend's party. It had struck him like sunlight after weeks of gray skies. Their early years of marriage were peaceful. They cooked dinner together in the evenings, went for long walks around the neighborhood, and planned trips they never took but loved imagining. Daniel believed that if life remained just like this, he'd die a happy man. But Claire was restless. In those first few years, Daniel didn't notice it much. She'd scroll through fashion magazines at night or follow social media accounts of models and actresses. She'd sometimes stand in front of the mirror longer than necessary, experimenting with poses and angles. Daniel would chuckle, kiss her on the cheek, and say, "You're more beautiful than any of them." She'd smile, but never answer. By the time Claire turned 27, her restlessness had grown into something Daniel could no longer ignore. One Saturday morning, as Daniel brewed coffee and flipped through the sports section, Claire sat across from him with her phone in hand. "You know," she began carefully, "there's an open casting call in Los Angeles next weekend. It's for a TV network. They're looking for fresh faces." Daniel lowered his newspaper, puzzled. "A casting call?" "Yes, for a show. I've been looking into it for weeks. I think I could do it, Daniel." Her eyes sparkled, as though she were already on set under bright studio lights. He frowned, unsure how to respond. "Claire, you've never acted before. I don't have to have a resume. They want a look, a presence, and I've always wanted something like this. You know that." Daniel set down his coffee slowly. "But our life is here. Our friends, our work. What about us?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not saying I'll move tomorrow. I just want to try. One audition. Please." Daniel wanted to say no. Every instinct told him this was a door best left closed. But when he looked into her eager eyes, he remembered why he had always supported her dreams, no matter how far-fetched. He nodded reluctantly. "One audition. That's it." Claire leapt from her chair and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Danny. You won't regret this." But deep inside, Daniel felt an unease he couldn't name. The week leading up to the audition was a blur. Claire spent hours practicing expressions in the mirror, recording short monologues she found online, and picking out outfits. Daniel watched silently, forcing himself to smile, though his chest felt heavier by the day. Friday night, she packed a suitcase. "Just 2 days," she said, kissing him goodbye at the airport. "Wish me luck." Daniel hugged her, inhaling the scent of her hair, and whispered, "Come back to me." When she disappeared past security, a pang of fear ran through him. Claire returned Sunday evening, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "How was it?" Daniel asked, trying to sound enthusiastic. "It was amazing," she gushed. "The director, Victor Hayes, said I had something special. He wants me to come back for a callback next week." Daniel blinked. "Wait, callback? That means going back to LA again?" "Yes, isn't that incredible?" He forced a smile. "Yeah, incredible." But something inside him shifted. He had heard of Victor Hayes, a name that floated in entertainment news, attached to hit shows and whispered scandals. Claire didn't notice his hesitation. She was already dreaming aloud about the possibilities. That night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Claire slept soundly beside him. He told himself it was just a phase. She'd try, get rejected, and return to the life they'd built together. But a small, gnawing voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if she doesn't?" Over the next few weeks, Claire flew to Los Angeles 3 more times. Each time, she returned glowing with news of progress. She had made it through rounds of auditions, and Victor Hayes seemed personally invested in her. Daniel asked once, cautiously, "What's he like, this Victor?" Claire hesitated. He's intense, but in a good way. He believes in me. He says I could really make it. Daniel swallowed hard. And what does he want in return? Claire's eyes darted away, then back. Nothing, just my talent. But Daniel didn't believe her. The last weekend in May, Claire received the call. She had been chosen for a recurring role in a new network series. She screamed with joy, spinning around the living room. Daniel smiled weakly, clapping for her. That night, as they celebrated with wine, she looked at him seriously. "Danny, this means I'll need to stay in LA for a while. At least during filming, maybe longer." The words struck him like a knife. "So you're leaving?" "Not forever, but yes, for now." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to shout, to forbid her, to demand she stay, but instead, he whispered, "If that's what you want." Claire cupped his face in her hands. "You're my husband. This doesn't change that." But deep down, Daniel knew everything had already changed. That summer, Daniel found himself alone more often than not. The house felt empty without Claire's laughter. She called sometimes, her voice hurried between rehearsals and shoots. She posted glamorous photos online, dressed in designer outfits, surrounded by lights and cameras. Neighbors began to whisper, friends asked awkward questions. Daniel forced smiles and said she was chasing her dream. But at night, when he sat in the silence of their home, a slow dread built inside him. He didn't know it yet, but the seeds of destruction were already planted. And soon, they would grow into something neither he nor Claire could ever escape. Los Angeles dazzled Claire from the moment she stepped off the plane. The palm trees, the sunshine, the sprawling freeways, it all felt like a dream. For years, she had stared at glossy magazines and Instagram feeds, imagining herself among the beautiful faces that seemed to live charmed lives. Now, for the first time, she felt the possibility was within her grasp. Victor Hayes made sure of that. The first time Claire had walked into his casting room, she had been terrified. The waiting area had been filled with women, each one striking, each one styled to perfection. But when Victor laid his eyes on Claire, she had noticed something different in his expression. His gaze lingered, assessing, as though he saw not just her beauty, but what he could mold from it. "You," he had said after her short monologue, "you have presence. Come back next week." Now, weeks later, she was standing in his office, overlooking the glittering Los Angeles skyline. Victor was a tall man with silver at his temples and a confidence that filled every corner of the room. His reputation preceded him. Women whispered about his charm, his power, and the way careers bloomed or withered at his say-so. "Claire," he said smoothly, pouring 2 glasses of wine, "you're not like the others. You have something rare." She smiled nervously, accepting the glass. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." "Victor," he corrected, "always Victor." His eyes lingered on her in a way that made her stomach flutter, half with flattery, half with discomfort. She had expected compliments, but the intensity unsettled her. "You want this role, don't you?" he asked, leaning closer. "Yes, more than anything." He nodded slowly, as if weighing her answer. "I can make you a star. I can give you everything, exposure, connections, roles people kill for. But you know this business, Claire. Nothing comes free." She blinked. "What do you mean?" Victor's smile deepened. "I like you, and if you like me back, doors will open. If not, well," he shrugged. "This industry can be very unforgiving." Claire's chest tightened. She had heard rumors of the casting couch, of women pressured into things they didn't want. She had always told herself she'd never compromise her dignity. Yet here it was, right in front of her, the offer spoken plainly. That night, she returned to her hotel room shaken. She called Daniel, who was in Denver eating takeout alone. "How's it going?" he asked cheerfully. Claire hesitated. "It's good. I think I'm close." "That's amazing," Daniel said, his voice warm. "I knew you could do it." She bit her lip, fighting the urge to tell him the truth. If she did, he'd insist she come home, that she walk away from it all. Instead, she said softly, "I miss you." "I miss you too, Claire. More than you know." When she hung up, she stared at the ceiling for a long time. One compromise, she told herself, just one, and it will all be worth it. The following week, she returned to Victor's office. This time, when he poured the wine and smiled at her, she didn't resist. She convinced herself she was making a choice, that she was in control. When it was over, she told herself it was only physical, nothing more. True to his word, Victor cast her in a recurring role on a new network drama. Suddenly, Claire was swept into a whirlwind of rehearsals, fittings, and late nights on set. Her face appeared in promotional posters, her social media followers skyrocketed, and journalists called her a rising star. But every step upward carried a weight she tried not to acknowledge. Back in Denver, Daniel followed her career with a knot in his stomach. At first, he was proud. Seeing her on television filled him with awe. That's my wife. But pride soon gave way to suspicion. Claire called less frequently. When she did, she was distracted, her answers clipped. Rehearsals are long, she'd say. I'm exhausted. When he asked about Victor, she brushed it off. He's just my director, Danny. Don't worry. But Daniel worried. He saw the way Victor's name appeared in articles about her. He saw the photos, Victor standing close beside her at industry parties, his hand lingering on her back. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Daniel came across a tabloid headline. Victor Hayes and new starlet Claire Miller, seen dining late in Hollywood hotspot. The accompanying photo showed them laughing together, heads tilted close. Daniel's chest tightened. He closed his laptop, his hands trembling. It's just business, he tried to tell himself. She loves me, she promised. But the gnawing doubt grew sharper every day. Claire returned home for a weekend in early autumn. Daniel met her at the airport, his heart leaping when he saw her. She looked radiant, glowing skin, stylish clothes, a confidence she hadn't had before. He hugged her tightly, but she seemed distracted, her eyes scanning the crowd. At home, over dinner, he finally asked, "Are you happy, Claire, with all of this?" She smiled faintly. "It's everything I dreamed of, but it's hard, Danny. The pressure, the attention, sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough." Daniel reached for her hand. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You're enough for me." Her eyes softened, but then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and the moment broke. That night, Daniel lay awake beside her, staring into the dark. He could feel the distance between them like a canyon widening. Back in Los Angeles, Victor tightened his grip on her life. He demanded her time, her presence, her affection. At first, Claire told herself it was worth it. The show was a success, her career was climbing. But slowly, she realized Victor's interest went beyond professional. One evening after a shoot, he cornered her in his office. "You belong with me, Claire. Not that small-town husband of yours. He'll only hold you back." Her chest constricted. "Victor, he's my husband. I love him." Victor's expression hardened. "Then choose, Claire. Him or this career. You can't have both." Claire flew home that weekend, her heart in turmoil. Daniel noticed the way she avoided his eyes, the way she sighed heavily at night. Finally, over breakfast, she whispered, "Danny, I think we need to talk." The words chilled him. "I love you, but..." Her voice trembled. "My life is in Los Angeles now. I can't keep pretending I can balance both. I think we should separate." Daniel's fork clattered onto his plate. "Separate? Claire, no. Don't say that. We can make this work." Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't want to hurt you, but if I don't do this, I'll resent you. I'm sorry." Daniel's world crumbled. For hours, he begged, pleaded, reasoned. But Claire was resolute. A week later, divorce papers arrived at his office. Daniel signed them with shaking hands, tears blurring the ink. When she walked away, it felt as if half of him had been ripped out. Victor was waiting for her in Los Angeles. Triumphant, she had chosen him, or so he believed. For a time, Claire convinced herself she had chosen her career. But at night, alone in her new apartment, she sometimes thought of Daniel, of their quiet dinners, their walks, the way he had loved her without condition. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his empty house in Denver, staring at the walls they had once decorated together. Grief turned to bitterness. Bitterness fermented into rage. And rage slowly began to whisper dangerous thoughts. Divorce was supposed to bring closure, but for Daniel Miller, it left only a hollow ache. He signed the papers, returned them, and watched as the life he had built with Claire collapsed into dust. Friends tried to console him. She wasn't worth it, they said, or you'll find someone else. But none of it mattered. Claire had been the center of his world, and without her, everything felt meaningless. At first, Daniel drowned himself in work. He spent long hours at the office, crunching numbers until his eyes blurred. But the silence of the evenings gnawed at him. The house they had once shared felt like a mausoleum of memories. The photo albums, the scent of her perfume lingering in the closet, the indentation on her side of the bed. Worse were the constant reminders of her new life. Entertainment websites splashed her face across their pages. Claire Miller, rising star. Paparazzi photos showed her stepping out of black cars, dressed in elegant gowns. More and more often, Victor Hayes was by her side. One night, Daniel sat in the dark, scrolling through articles on his phone. He stopped on a photo of Victor, with his hand on Claire's waist. His chest burned. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation. She had left him for another man, and that man was flaunting her in public. For the first time, Daniel whispered aloud what had been growing in his mind for weeks. She destroyed me. And then, like a shadow creeping in, another thought followed. Why should she get to live happily ever after? Meanwhile, Claire's career soared. The television drama was a hit, and her role expanded. She was invited to parties, interviews, and red carpets. People recognized her on the street, asking for selfies. But success came with chains. Victor demanded constant attention. At first, she thought it was love. He showered her with gifts, whispered promises of marriage, told her she was his muse. But slowly, his affection turned possessive. "You didn't answer my call last night," he snapped one evening after a shoot. "I was exhausted," Claire explained. "I fell asleep." "Too exhausted for me, but not for your fans online?" He shoved his phone toward her, showing a photo she had posted with her castmates. She recoiled. "Victor, it was just a picture. You're overreacting." His eyes darkened. "Don't forget who made you, Claire. Without me, you'd still be nobody in Denver." She didn't reply, but a knot formed in her stomach. The freedom she thought she'd gained felt more like a cage. Back in Denver, Daniel's bitterness hardened into obsession. He began collecting every article, every photo of Claire and Victor. He created folders on his computer, cataloging her appearances, her interviews, her movements. At night, he'd pour himself whiskey and replay old memories in his head. The way she used to curl against him on the couch, the way she whispered his name in the dark. Then the images would twist, morphing into her laughing beside Victor, her lips on another man's. Sleep eluded him. The anger was constant, burning like acid in his veins. One evening, drunk and pacing, Daniel muttered to himself, "She chose him over me. She chose fame over love. She destroyed us." And then, for the first time, the thought crystallized. I could end this. I could make her pay. Daniel wasn't reckless. If he was going to do this, it had to be planned, methodical, invisible. He started by reading crime blogs, news articles, documentaries about unsolved cases. He studied how killers were caught, mistakes they made, evidence they left behind. He told himself he was preparing only as a mental exercise, but deep down, he knew the truth. He was preparing for her. His mind twisted her memory. The Claire he had once loved became a phantom of betrayal, a symbol of everything stolen from him. He convinced himself she wasn't innocent, that she had made her choice, and that choice had killed their marriage. Now, he would kill her. In Los Angeles, Claire's doubts about Victor grew heavier. His obsession suffocated her. His jealousy drained her spirit. Yet every time she thought of leaving, fear stopped her. Without him, would her career survive? One night, after a heated argument, Victor slammed a glass against the wall. "If you walk out that door, you'll never work in this town again. Understand?" Claire froze. In that moment, she realized the bars of her golden cage. She was no longer chasing a dream. She was trapped in a nightmare. She thought briefly of Daniel, of the man who had loved her without conditions. Tears filled her eyes. She had chosen wrong. Daniel traveled to Los Angeles under the pretense of a business conference. In truth, he had booked a hotel near Claire's apartment. For 2 days, he watched from a distance, studying her routines, the time she left for set, the cafes she visited, the patterns of her security. Each sighting filled him with a mix of longing and fury. Seeing her alive, laughing, moving through the world, it ignited the rage he had carefully stoked. On the third night, he whispered to himself, "Soon." The plan was simple. He knew where she lived, knew she often returned late at night alone after filming. He would wait, catch her by surprise, and make it look like a robbery gone wrong. But beneath the logistics was something darker. He wanted her to know it was him. He wanted her to see his face, to understand why, because in his twisted reasoning, this wasn't murder. It was justice. The night came in early winter. Claire had just finished a long shoot and was walking to her apartment, clutching her bag against the chill. The streets were unusually quiet. As she reached her building, a figure stepped from the shadows. Her breath caught. "Daniel?" He stared at her, his face pale, his eyes hollow. "Claire." Shock rippled through her. "What are you doing here?" "I came for answers," he said, his voice trembling. "Why? Why did you do this to us?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Danny, please. I made mistakes. I was blinded. But you don't understand, Victor. He controlled everything." "Don't you dare blame him," Daniel snapped, his voice rising. "You chose him. You chose fame. You threw me away like garbage." Claire reached out, desperation in her voice. "I never stopped caring about you. Please, you have to believe me." For a brief second, Daniel's resolve faltered. He saw the woman he had once loved, the laughter, the warmth. But then the images of her with Victor flooded his mind, and the fury roared back. His hand tightened around the knife hidden in his jacket. "I loved you," he whispered, "and you killed me long before tonight." Claire gasped as he lunged forward. The knife struck. Her cry echoed in the empty street, then faded into silence. Daniel staggered back, his chest heaving. Claire lay motionless, her eyes wide with shock, blood staining her dress. For a moment, the world went still. Then a strange calm washed over him. He had done it. The torment was over. He dropped the knife and walked quickly away, disappearing into the night. At first, he thought he had succeeded. News reports framed it as a tragic robbery. Detectives spoke of Hollywood crime, random violence. Daniel returned to Denver, blending back into his quiet routine. But inside, guilt festered. He saw her in every shadow, heard her voice in every silence. Her laughter haunted him. Sleep abandoned him. His hands shook at work, his coworkers whispering about his strange behavior. The police investigation dragged on. Weeks later, inconsistencies emerged. Surveillance cameras placed Daniel in Los Angeles the night of the murder. A witness recalled seeing a man matching his description near the scene. One cold morning, detectives knocked on his door. Daniel didn't resist, he simply whispered, "I loved her," as they placed him in handcuffs. In the courtroom months later, the truth unfolded. The jury heard of jealousy, betrayal, and obsession. They saw the evidence, the timeline, the motive. Daniel was sentenced to life in prison. As the gavel struck, he closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw Claire's face, not the starlet, not the victim, but the woman who once laughed freely in his arms. Tears slid down his cheeks. Love had turned to rage, and rage had destroyed them both. The dream of a perfect life had ended in blood and ruin. Thanks for listening. Hit the like button if you really like this story, and don't forget to subscribe.